Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Inside Gamescast, the last Gamescast of 2023. I'm Lawrence,
That's right.
joined by Bruce. How you doing, Bruce?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm ready to talk to Lawrence like I always am.
Yeah, and what are we going to talk about? Starfield, Bruce, because everyone loves to hate Starfield. It's the biggest pile of trash, most underwhelming game. How could Bethesda do this? Trolling Steam reviews. Yeah, Steam. Yeah, we whatever we have to say to justify our clickbait title, because these days people love to hate Starfield. And if you clicked on this video, gotcha a little bit, but also it's an interesting trend because I see, as much as I see everyone on the internet kind of agree that Starfield isn't really bad or offensive, it's just average. People are still infatuated with it in a way that doesn't really explain away. Reddit threads keep popping to the top, even on our own channel. The best performing content is of a supposedly middling game that came out a while ago and everybody should have moved on from by now. So what's going on, man? It's kind of fascinating. And in some ways, you have to admit that this game lodging itself in people's consciousness, it must have done something to do that instead of just being immediately forgotten.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Bruce. I got some theories. I think because both of us work in the media and we see people's responses to things in a mathematical way, sometimes the contradiction between the math and what people say and express can lead to some interesting discussion points. So
yeah, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance when it comes to the internet's opinion, and then obviously sales.
Yeah, because it didn't sell bad.
Not at all. No.
But what I also think is fascinating is in the wake of Starfield, it's kind of weird to be half-heartedly defending it now. Because I think we were in a similar position with Cyberpunk, but for vastly different reasons. So, a lot to talk about. I think it's a fascinating topic. So, let's get after it. I think, kind of generically, this has been a growing trend in games that I've seen ever since Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk was such a buffet. It was a hater buffet, man.
It really was. Yeah.
People made a pastime out of hating on that game. Like
they did.
They enjoyed watching negative content more than playing it or anything else, which is not necessarily new for gamers, but it was a whole other thing. And we had some of that this year in 2023. You know, we had, Battlefield 2042 was a few years ago, but Redfall earlier this year.
Oh, yeah.
Gollum. They each had their feeding frenzy, you know? Those games had their 2 weeks on Reddit and 2 weeks on YouTube where people just loved watching takedown videos. And I'm not going to wring my hands over that. I get it. I kind of like pointing and I kind of like watching a car wreck too. I'm not going to judge on that. But I guess what's odd about Starfield specifically is that it hung around so much longer.
Yeah, so we should say off the top, by the way, I think both Lawrence and I enjoyed playing Starfield. Like I had played, I think about 100 hours of it, maybe a little less. And I enjoyed the hell out of it. I loved streaming it. I loved playing it. I thought it was great. I'm not going to speak for Lawrence, but as far as I could tell, Lawrence enjoyed it, right, Lawrence? Yeah,
I was pretty dramatic leading up to it because I thought the marketing was way overselling the game, and I was worried that everyone was buying it at face value, which a lot of people sounded like they were.
Yeah,
so I was trying to bring the temperature down, but then when the game was out, it wasn't offensive. So I have no reason to kind of hang on to it the way it seems people have. So yeah, I liked it. I had fun with it. I got to New Game Plus. I dicked around a little, and then just kind of wandered away, like I think a lot of people did.
Yeah, so that's important because I've seen a lot of people, hilariously, Lawrence, the temperature has changed on even our content now when we release like our most recent Starfield is fucking trash, say modders video. That's like literally going a little bit viral. Like people are picking it up almost every day. I see new comments on that video randomly and it's getting more and more views. And people are always like, oh, I'm so tired of Lawrence and Bruce trashing on Starfield. I'm like, no, hold on. We have not trashed on Starfield at all. We've been telling you this game was relatively mediocre from what we saw in the marketing materials, but a lot of people didn't want to believe that. They wanted to buy in, hook, line, and sinker, and they did. Even when the game came out and we were seeing 7 out of 10s and stuff like that, and we were like, this is kind of a middling reception, and everyone's like, no, that's wrong. This is not a middling reception. This is absolutely, the IGN scored it lower than it deserved, and we were like, oh, okay. And then it like slowly started turning. It's really interesting. I can't figure out why it started turning. I want to say, what was that 2-3 months after the game came out, maybe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, once people got some time with it.
Any theories on that, Lawrence?
I have a few. I think gamers are developing taste. I think that's part of it. I think the gaming audience is getting older. They've played a bigger bulk of games, and they're starting to understand I see a lot more understanding of what made Skyrim good versus Starfield. I'm seeing a lot more ability of people to compare the two and actually identify the gameplay features that they liked. As opposed to 10 years ago, everyone would just be like, this game rules. And that would be it. And everyone would just kind of agree that games that weren't really great were the best because they were the biggest, had the most marketing, and where everyone agreed that that was where it was. Kind of a Skyrim situation. So now it's funny, Starfield comes out. Reaction is pretty immediately middling, and even now people are looking back and being like, oh, wait a minute, maybe Skyrim wasn't the best, because now they played Baldur's Gate 3. And there were games like Baldur's Gate 3 in the era of Skyrim. People just didn't know about them because they were like really thick, hard to play PC games.
Right.
So yeah, I think the gaming audience in general is getting a little more seasoned, which kind of explains this reaction a little to me. But that's just one factor. Yeah, the latest news pip that lit up Reddit and everything was that Starfield is now rated mostly negative in recent reviews on Steam. There's one review that I'll quote here that I thought nailed it. This is from, let me look up the username real quick. From Ankh writes, there's a 40-minute quest where you help an important character collect evidence to clear the name of his spouse. By the end of the quest, you're told that enough evidence has been gathered and that they have a chance to win. Except that you never get to see the trial. The quest just ends. This is exactly how it feels playing the game. A lot of potential and cool ideas deduced to, oh, is that it? I think in the past that might have worked, but nowadays people expect a little more.
Which is, I think maybe in another year, if it hadn't been 2023, Starfield might have been a little more well received. This might have been like a little bit of, hey, Bethesda, you know what? This is what they make. And it's fine. Because it wasn't a broken mess like Fallout 76, thank God. But it definitely was on the order of Fallout 4. So, because this is kind of what I remember from Fallout 4's reception too. It's kind of sort of middling. Like everyone was like, yeah, it's okay. It's cool. And then obviously modders come along and then the game gets better. And now everyone's like, oh, Fallout, well, it's just genius. So, that'll happen with Starfield too, I think. But if this hadn't come out in 2023, if we didn't have a Baldur's Gate, a Tears of the Kingdom, Armored Core, I can just go down the list of these amazing video games, then maybe there wouldn't be the same comparison. Maybe we wouldn't be able to look immediately right or left and see games that are leaps and bounds better than Starfield. I don't know.
Ooh, I don't think there's going to be a year ever again where Starfield looks favorable, and that sounds really cruel, but it would have hit if it came out in 2013. It would have been, people would have loved it. But here we are. So what I'm kind of curious to do now is to discuss, and you got into it a little, Bruce, the cultural factors that not necessarily led to people reacting to Starfield as the sort of middling game that it tends to be, but what makes people still infatuated with it.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of middling games that come out and most people just forget about them.
That's right.
So one of the theories that I have, and this is the one that's closest to us, so it may involve the most projection, is that gaming in general is now large enough that there's enough of a subsection of gaming enthusiasts that can support a very robust tabloid news cycle. Everyone that falls into the cycle of feeding off of negativity, there's now enough of them to upvote enough Reddit threads and get enough popular traction to create this feeding cycle. And the cycle just continues until the next thing comes along that's a better target. So we haven't had anything to laugh at as hard as Starfield, but people are out there wanting to consume content about a game that they want to point and laugh at. So it's Starfield until the next thing. I don't know. What do you think about that, Bruce?
Oh man, I feel like you hit the nail on the head. Because gaming, I was just looking at this. GamesIndustry.biz just did this amazing infographic of sales for basically, I think it's for 2023, and then mobile game sales is way above anything else. And it's one of those things where I see often people mobile games are trash, free to play games are garbage, and that's all people are playing and spending their money on. It's amazing, and everyone. And I also see a lot of threads on Reddit or wherever else where people are always like, well, we should all be buying physical games digital games are garbage. We don't even own them. And it's like 95% of purchases are digital. Like it's crazy. So it's such an interesting thing. You're totally right, Lawrence. There's like this minority of people who are very loud and have a lot of time to spend on Reddit, and are constantly talking about all these things that are so out of touch with actual reality and with what's going on with all of gaming. And by the way, none of that is wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that is the truth. The truth is in the sales. The truth is proof is in the pudding, right? We know what people are buying. We know what people are playing because we have those numbers. But we also can see there's a little subsection of people that are angry about almost everything. And that's the thing that, for me, I find odd with Starfield, is that I don't really know that there's much to be angry about with Starfield. To me, it's sort of like, this game's on Game Pass, bros. Like, you pay $10 and you can play the game. Like, if it were me, I would be like, I pay $10. I played it for 10 hours and I was like, that's kind of boring. And I move on. So there are no excuses, I don't think. If you spent $70 on Starfield and you're like, oh my God, I hate it. Like, that's kind of on you. You should have just paid for Game Pass. But so I think you're right. I think, Lawrence, there are people that just want to point and laugh at anything, movies, television, whatever, video games, just because it makes them feel better. And this is, rage bait was a thing before the pandemic, but especially now during the whole rage bait of Cyberpunk, I saw people cashing in opinions for likes over and over and over that I knew they didn't hold those opinions. Like, I'd talk to them and they were like, nah, it's not that bad. And then they would just go on a rant about how bad Cyberpunk was online. And I was like, well, now, come on. So
that kind of, I don't know. I want to get back to Starfield in a bit, but yeah, Bruce, that really touches on a topic I've been thinking about a lot personally lately, is the fuzzy intersection of our jobs and public opinion. Yeah, it's kind of scary because games media, now that there is a pretty robust tabloid cycle as far as I can identify, we have to flirt with that out of necessity. But
absolutely.
We just have to make sure that the body of our content doesn't get taken over by that, because the call of the void is very strong when everybody wants you to do a certain thing and they celebrate you for doing it and you get money and accolades. Yeah. So I could see how people would trip into that or go so far as to think the online sphere of stuff is all theater and then, the rest is just my personal beliefs. I think we've both been lucky that we haven't had to compromise that. So that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, we really, honestly, I mean, you're right. Like, we still take shit every single episode for our opinions. People are like, it's just a constant string of comments about how we said something wrong or did something wrong. And I don't wear it as a badge of honor, but to me, it's more of like, yeah, I mean, we try to approach it with a nuanced take rather than Starfield's bad. That's mostly negative on Steam. And that's because Starfield's a terrible game. No, we don't do that. Like, that's not, we're not trying to cash in on the likes. We are definitely trying to get you to watch with our titles and our thumbnails. Absolutely, guaranteed, because we need you to watch the show or else we can't make the show anymore. But ideally, you click in and then watch it and go, oh, okay, all right. There are actual opinions here with nuanced takes that we've thought through.
Well, and on that note, Bruce, when you talk about like calling Starfield garbage, I think that that leads into kind of a second theory that I have, because like you said, it's just kind of a middling game. There's aspects of it that are actually pretty likable. Unfortunately, it does drop the like banner feature of Bethesda games, which is exploration, but that's neither here nor there. But it does feed into the narrative around the game, and I think this could be another factor of why it's such a fascination with folks, because it was supposed to be the golden child, right? It was supposed to be the crown jewel. Microsoft, by reports, acquired Bethesda to make Starfield an Xbox exclusive, or even more than that, to prevent it from being a PlayStation exclusive is actually what the thing was. So Microsoft spent like, billions of dollars on Bethesda. This game's
like
been
7-8 billion, right?
Something like that. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head. I just remember 6.9, but it's not that. It was a lot of money. Yeah, it was like 6, 7, 8 billion. And this is the game that the new IP they've been working on for 6 years. It's their dream project. So, like, that by itself is not great when it lands, and it's technically like a really impressive Skyrim mod. But it's also like the other narrative around other Xbox game studios. They've all been pretty middling. 343 didn't deliver a dynamite Halo. We've had some good Forza Horizons, so that's something.
Yeah, those are absolutely, you're right.
Like Forza Motorsport launched this year, and I don't think people cared for more than a week because it's kind of a weirdly very direct and basic game. Strange. But yeah, other Xbox game studios, maybe with the exception of Tango Gameworks and Hi-Fi Rush, haven't really captured people's imagination and interest. So by all rights, Starfield was supposed to be it. You know, it's the next Skyrim in space. It's sci-fi. And it was so bland that I think that's even worse than it being bad, you know? When expectations are so high and it doesn't it falls short, but not even in an impressive way. Because then there might be something a little more redeeming about it. Yeah.
Right. It's not a disaster like a Golem or a Kong, where like those games, they're, you know, based on IPs already, and they're just literal disasters. Like I played through those games, they're garbage.
But that's an unsatisfying narrative, right? That everything's
very unsatisfying. Yeah.
Everything's vaulted on this one game, and it's just like, it's way more fun for it to be utter garbage, you know? So maybe that's the narrative that people are starting to create because it's more fun to talk about.
Yeah, I also think you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, that's really sad that we have to create a bad narrative around something that isn't necessarily bad just because everybody wants to shit on something. But I also think that slowly people are... This is going to sound kind of crazy, but it's sort of like the trope of you see somebody's played 500 hours of something on Steam and they reviewed it negatively, where they're like, I played 500 hours of this. It's terrible. Don't play it. And you're like, why did you play it for 500 hours? So that's what this feels like to me with Starfield, is that a bunch of people finally got into the game. They played it for 100 hours or whatever. And by the end of the 100 hours, they felt unsatisfied. So they went, this is a bad game. I was like, is it? Is it? If you played it 100 hours? I don't think it is. I think if you played it for 3 and you stopped, then you'd be like, you could say that this was a game you didn't like. 100 hours, that's a hard one. That's a hard one.
They might be 12. Can you do that? I'm just thinking about, I mean, there are people out there that just have an excess of free time. So it's like, maybe. I don't mean this in an insulting way. I mean that life circumstance sometimes can give you 500 hours that you have nothing better to spend them on.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I agree, Bruce. Those always raise an eyebrow or two. The 1,500 hours, do not recommend for like a $15 game. Come on, man.
So to me, that feels like maybe people are slowly discovering that Starfield is not what the hype was. They finally got around to playing it or whatever. And they all bought into the marketing machine before, which we never did. You and I never did. So maybe that's now they've finally gotten to play it. And they went, oh, this is just like you said, it's just like a fancy Skyrim mod about, you know, in space. And maybe that's why it's taken so long for it to turn around.
It was so nostalgia plus a good marketing cycle bought Bethesda 2 months of runway and public sentiment, basically.
Which, by the way, helps them tremendously because I would say most sales of the game usually happen when the game first releases. So that's what they want. They want everybody to be like, well, Starfield's so great. When it first comes out. So then that way they can sell a bunch of copies and it'll peter off until next year, when I promise you, next year somebody's going to release a mod for Starfield where everyone's like, you got to play Starfield now. It's time. You got to play it.
If they, within like a month, I bet if they have a proper mod kit, I can see modders getting like planet to space flight working pretty quickly, or at least faking it in a way that makes it feel a little more immersive. Because man, there was barely even any attempt to hide that, and that just kills the game, man. I couldn't get over when Todd was like waving his hand away at like, oh, players don't want that. That's everything. That's all.
We said it over. Yeah, we said it over and over. We were in the videos. We were like, no, this is bad. This is bad that they took this away from us. And everyone's like, no, you got to listen to Todd. And we were like, no, guys, this is part of space exploration. That's the whole point. You're not behind 7 loading screens to get to a planet. Yeah. And I still don't understand why everybody was like, no, you guys are wrong. What?
I consider it a really interesting case study in, like you said, communications and audience dynamics. Because yeah, a lot of people were out there doing Bethesda's work for them in explaining, even media, man. I don't want to name any names, so I won't. But a lot of like media were doing some heavy lifting for Bethesda. When the preview footage came out, everybody was like, "Oh, here's why it's so technically amazing." And we were sitting there being like, "There's nothing here. There's nothing new." And people would talk about these like complicated simulations that were supposedly going on. It's just not in the game. I have the direct running over here. The direct is pretty honest about what the game is. It's just edited really well.
That's right.
They make the blandest features seem interesting. And I remember watching this and being like, "Oh God, Starfield is in huge trouble." And then everyone else was like, "Well, it looks so, you can do everything." So yeah, it's a weird situation where the marketing really did hit, to Bethesda's credit. That's what marketing's supposed to do. So remember that in the future, you guys. And it's weird because some companies get so much flack for their marketing, like No Man's Sky or Cyberpunk, which were actually really light on marketing. Cyberpunk had their Night City wires. That was pretty heavy, but still. And I haven't heard anyone call out Bethesda's marketing for misleading people's expectations. That's really weird. That's like the first thing that people do is invent a marketing straw man and hate on it for hyping up the game.
For Cyberpunk, that's exactly what they did. They went back to the Night City wires and were like, "Oh my gosh, they showed the train over and over, and we didn't get a train." Like that. So but nobody said that was Starfield. And I remember when we were watching it, you and I were watching it, kind of drunk. And we were both like, there is no gameplay here. Like we saw like little sections of gameplay, but we never saw 15 minutes of uninterrupted gameplay. And it was the same with Cyberpunk Night City Wires. There weren't really anything like that. Because when we did our Cyberpunk Live video a few months ago, I got to watch those again. And I was like, oh yeah, it's all edited. So that's the first thing. If you're ever watching anything when it comes to marketing for games, if you do not see 10 or 15 minutes of unedited gameplay, then there might be an issue. So be aware that things will probably change, because if they're just showing little snippets of like combat or traveling or sandwiches or whatever, then you're like, oh, okay, well, this looks cool, but what's in between? And that's what's really important, because that's the actual flow of a video game. That's how you play it.
People love those sandwiches, man. Video games have been able to stack things in piles for 20 years. I played Max Payne 2. Max Payne 2 has stacky physics. You can't just spawn 100 sandwiches, but it's got really solid physics. I don't know why, man. People had stars in their eyes, pun partially intended. Which leads me to my third possible theory of why people love to hate this game so much. Mm-hmm. And this is psychoanalyzing a cloud of people, which is always a worthwhile endeavor. But this is a little more like I was there, so I can kind of make this claim. I think, like I had said before, a lot of people who grew up gaming in the aughts, they're experiencing a nostalgia cycle for games that just weren't that good in the first place. Which is unfortunate, but that's just where the console divide was. A lot of game design that had existed on the PC 15 years prior was just trickling its way onto the PS3 and 360. And in not great versions either. A lot of those games were heavily simplified because I guess designers either didn't want to attempt complicated game mechanics. I think the prevailing thought was that it would alienate new players. So people grew up on games like Halo and Bethesda's open world games, thinking that they were the pinnacle of design. But they weren't. They were actually pretty heavily compromised to work on a controller and like laggy HD TVs and all that stuff. So now we're getting either the same developers or developers that grew up on those games trying to make those games again or bring the magic back. And I think gamers have taste now where they're a bit older or they value their time more. And that magic just doesn't work anymore because maybe it wasn't all that magical in the first place. So I think those original flaws are starting to become problems in that the original designers, the people that understood the workings of it have left. And now you have people that are just referencing their work. And then you just get kind of a weird imitation of it as opposed to a reimagining or a rebirth with the same design tenets. That was something I thought about Halo Infinite. It's like, they're doing their best to make this game a fast modern shooter, but it's still Halo. And I don't know what elements of Halo you can retain and still make it more modern, because then it just stops being Halo. It's like a Ship of Theseus thing. So I don't know, Bruce. What do you think about that? Having gamed in the aughts?
Man, it sucks because I don't want to be like Lawrence and I grew up playing games on the PC. Like literally grew up. We've both been playing games on the PC for like 25 years, and I don't want to be. I don't want to be that guy that's like games on the PC have always been better.
That's the domain of the PC gamer. Yeah,
they have though. They have, and I'm not saying that at like because I personally think that the casual RPG of Bethesda is amazing. Like I love Skyrim. I love Fallout. Those games, to me, a casual RPG is so great because I could just drop in and play it for an hour or two and then stop and then go somewhere else. I didn't have to worry about Divinity Original Sin 2 where I was like, oh my gosh, I want to put 10 hours into this or something, like know every mechanic. So I don't want to say that gaming on the PC in terms of design has always been better, but they probably had more resources to work with than old consoles. And to that point, now they're imitating that. They're imitating the casual RPGs that are on console, but on like so powerful machines, which is so weird. I don't think that anybody should be doing that. And I'll give you a good example. The Finals. The Finals is a great example of developers who made Battlefield, worked on Battlefield for years and years and years, and when they left, they could have gone on and make another Battlefield. They could have just been like, well, we'll make another Battlefield because that's what we know how to do. But they didn't do that. I actually was just reading a little thing the other day that those developers were like, we don't even want to make a shooter. And they ended up, obviously landing on a shooter because they know how to make that. But they were looking to make something new. And the Finals really does feel like something new.
Yeah.
They did a great job in making that game feel like it's its own genre almost, even though it's not. It's an arena shooter. But it really does feel new. And boy, if only I could go to Todd Howard's office and be like, Todd, you're great at Fallout. You're great at Skyrim. Make something new. Try it. Just try it. And and you know what he would tell me? We have 1 billion investors that want the line to go up. And I'd be like, you got me, Todd. You're right. And that's the problem. Is
they
that
made Fallout Shelter? Yeah, I'm trying to think now. 76, I guess, was supposed to be new.
76 was maybe the closest thing that they were trying to like change it a little bit, which I appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure they made 76. They got shit on for 2 years, and they went, never mind. Let's just fucking make another game that is the same because we know it will sell, and it did. So it sucks. Like I bet Todd and his team, I bet they have so many fucking cool ideas, dude. I bet they've got so many great ideas because there are a lot of really smart, talented people at Bethesda. And I'm sure that they all would be like, oh, I made this, I have this idea for this game. I have this idea for this game. But everyone went, line go up. and they went, okay, you're right. Line go up. So I bet after Starfield, I bet we see groups of people leave Bethesda and start their own thing.
I hope. Yeah. Once public sentiment turns against a developer, people tend to leave. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's. So yeah. I agree. I kind of have a different theory, and maybe this is projecting, but so to kind of rephrase, you think they chose safe design tenets because they thought that's what the market wanted, basically. Because
they knew it would sell,
and it did.
And it did, and I bet not even to talk about Microsoft, but I'm sure Microsoft put their hands in and said, "You got to make something that's like Fallout," and they went, "Okay,
maybe."
So,
well, I guess it was in development before they were acquired, right? So theoretically, it would have already been like Fallout at that point.
So that's a totally valid point. And again, I'm saying this because I think Bethesda is a moneymaker. They want to make money.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure, that's why they got acquired for sure. Yeah. Or a Game Pass.
They're not there to make high art. Like they're there to make games that a lot of people play. So
yeah, I agree. Going back to your point about PC, not only was it more technically advanced, it just had more horsepower, more peripherals, more 3D acceleration, all that kind of stuff, more storage.
Mm-hmm.
The internet. But I think also, because of PC's cost and complexity, I think there was always a tendency for PC players to be older or at least more willing to endure annoyance to get to their experience.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that kind of screened out. It was a natural barrier to not to the platform's benefit, by the way. But I think those are dynamics that led to the kinds of games you would find on PC. They tended to be more complicated. They used more buttons. They had more complicated simulations. So I think the dynamic you would see then is that console has a simplified controller, less hardware resources. So it just tends to have simpler games.
Yeah.
So I think what we have now is people that they enjoyed games that were made for their small baby brains when they had small baby brains. And now they have grown up brains. And they're trying to like figure out the difference, I think, between the two, between complicated gameplay. Honestly, Spider-Man is kind of there. It's a mass market game. And part of being a mass market game means it's not going to be that complicated. It's going to have the illusion of complication. So it's a 2-button fighting game with glitzy cutscenes that make no sense if you actually try to follow them in any kind of narrative way. But it makes people happy. So to me, that's what I read in Starfield, is that they were intentionally making a mass market game, and they designed it around that. And I think those design tenets converge on what they've done with Fallout, because Fallout is also a mass market game. Gamers kind of have noticed this in some ways. There's the memes about dialogue getting simplified, that like Y is just a thumbs up, A is a thumbs down, instead of having actual like lines of dialogue or anything. That's part of it. That's part of the simplification, the babyification of games to make them appeal to everyone on the planet. So I think that was the design thrust behind Starfield. I think it's also a mix of like, when you design a game for other people to enjoy, you have to very spiritually understand what aspects about it they enjoy. And I think what happened is people made Starfield by the book. They went down the math. Here are the things that people like, that they've told us they like in focus groups. But they lost the music. They lost the jazz. And the jazz of it is when you're exploring and find spontaneous adventures. Somehow Starfield completely precluded that from happening, minus NPCs chattering near you and stuffing your quest log full of stuff that you'll probably never do. Yeah. So to me, it reads like people got so detached from the spiritual truth of what they were making that they made something by the numbers. And as a result, you have this soulless execution of a formula that everyone thought should have worked. But if anyone sat down and played it themselves, it would have been pretty obvious what wasn't working about it. But since everyone's head down in it day after day, it gets really hard to get that perspective. And this is when I'm fully projecting, because I've been a part of media enterprises before that get like that. It's a turn the crank sort of situation. But then the product suffers because all you're doing is turning the crank and not putting any spirit into it. I don't know. What do you think about that one, Bruce?
Yeah, no, I agree, and I also don't want to take away credit from Bethesda's actual developers, people that are working there, because I think along the way, because this is the case, like Lawrence just talked about when the companies we worked at, along the way we would have ideas, and we would go like, oh, we should do this, or we should like put this thing in, or whatever, and I'm sure Bethesda's developers have done the same thing, where they're along the way, they were making Starfield, and they're like, oh, we could do this really, really fun thing. Or, like we could have this. So here's a way, Todd, where we can have them fly from space to the planet. And they said, how long does it take? 10 minutes. No. And they're like, get it down to 5, we'll talk. And they get it down to 5. No. And it's kind of one of those things where, like, again, people along the way, I'm sure they wanted the jazz. They were trying to, because they're artists. They're talented artists. And they know what they're doing. So there was, probably a few people at the top, not executives, but people that are, guiding the game to be like, it has to be this exact experience. Like, you can only spend a few seconds in a loading screen. You can only spend a few seconds in space, because otherwise people get bored. And I think the counterpoint to that kind of game design is Baldur's Gate. Because Baldur's Gate, Larian, they just love those games. They've been making those games for years and years and years. And like, for all intents and purposes, like, you go back and play Divinity Original Sin, they're amazing video games, but holy hell, are they boring. They are really boring.
And intimidating. It hits you with bricks of text right off the top. That's how you shove players out of your game, basically.
Right. And Baldur's Gate, I think they managed to find this beautiful, like, sweet spot between a really complicated, artsy video game and something that brings people in. And by the way, this is something that I think I've talked about this probably for as long as I've been in media. This is the hardest thing to do. And it is the hardest thing to do in, I think, in all of entertainment, the business, is making something that everyone can enjoy, but also allows you to artistically flex. And boy, is that hard. I don't think people understand how hard it is, because I've been doing it a long time, and it's, for me, that's always been my thesis when it comes to stuff that I make. Is I love to make the things that everybody can enjoy. Literally everyone. That's my goal. But also, I like to do things that are fun for me. So I try and figure out the balance as an individual content creator. Now, I'm not going to give you examples, because I'm sure if I throw out examples, people will be like, "Those are trash, Bruce. Those are garbage." So I don't want to do that. I'll just generally speak on movies, television, music. Whenever I see people talk about how easy it is to make pop music, or it's so easy to make this one movie, I'm always like, no. Like, it's the opposite. Like, this creator who made whatever it is, or even a group of creators, put together this pop song or put together this movie for you, and it appealed to everybody and it exploded. They got to flex artistically. They got to do what they were doing. That's impossible. It's like almost like it never happens. It happens once every 10 years or something. It's like, so I think Starfield is on the mass market side of that, and then Baldur's Gate hit the sweet spot. I think they nailed it.
It's so good you bring up all that stuff, Bruce. Damn, you always have such a good head around the intersection of creativity and real world logistic demands.
Well, thank you. Well, geez.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there. All of that's not even accounting for just the happenstance of the human condition. The most popular things are like well made, have artistic merit, and also it's just in the zeitgeist. Like, everyone was ready for that thing. Right. And I think that's kind of where Bethesda has been for a while. They were right place, right time, right developer that was incidentally making the right thing. I think a lot about David Lynch's blow up in the 90s. He has always made the thing he makes.
That's true, yeah.
It was just momentarily hyper popular in the early 90s because for some reason it just hit at the right time for what everybody was thinking about and feeling. Excuse me.
Yeah.
But he was always very true to the thing he made, and he made it exactly the way he wanted. He wasn't intending to get popular, but he did. And then he made some bigger budget stuff, and it's kind of like he stayed true to the thing he wants to make in the way he wants to make it. As opposed to, trying, well, I guess he did Dune, but whatever. So yeah, I do agree, Bruce, in what you said, that like some people they're allowed to have these because people can have whatever expectations they want, but to expect a group of people that once made something that was the intersection of all those things to do it in perpetuity, intentionally every time, that's tough. Only
hard.
Geniuses can do that.
That's correct. And the geniuses that evolve as artists do that. I mean, again, there are not many people that I can point to that have done that. I think people would probably, and the reason everybody talked about, I don't even like the Beatles, by the way, but the reason everybody talks about the Beatles is because that's what they did. They started as a pop group, and they made pop music, and it was incredibly popular, and everybody exploded. And then they evolved as artists and made music that should not have been pop music, but was, and also some of the most popular of all time. And so the Beatles is the perfect example of that. That evolved and also stopped at exactly the right time too. So,
yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's hard to think of a better creative narrative than that.
Yeah.
Except if you had the expectation that the Beatles would make transformative, artistically sublime records for 50 years straight.
Oh, that's so hard, though. That's so hard. How do you do that? How do you evolve consistently you're evolving as a person when you're doing that too, not only as an artist, because your tastes have to change. Like, things have to change around you in order for you to be like, I'm making something that artistically is what I want to make and it expresses my art, but also vibes with the people. I'm not sure. I think Lawrence and I have been doing this a long time, and I don't ever feel reactive to what I'm like, but every single day I put thought into what I'm doing. Every single day I'm like, should I stream this? Should I make a video about this? Should I is this right? I mean, Lawrence and I have a once a week conversation about Inside Games. We're like, should we be doing what everybody else is doing on the internet? Because a lot of people on the internet they sit down and read a news article and then react to it. And Lawrence and I are like, should we be doing that? Is that something that instead of, producing an episode, writing the episode, getting it fully edited, and we're not sure. It's a honestly, really, it changes every week. We're always like, well, we don't know yet. Yeah,
I'm okay not following. I think we both arrive at the same market forces that make the content be like that. This is sort of, it's almost like we have the behind the scenes version of what we presume happened on a large scale with Starfield at this point. But yeah, there's market forces and cost of production that really make those kinds of videos make a lot of sense. They're cheap, they're fast, you can flip them quickly, you get into the search algorithms quick, and the audience doesn't seem to really demand any more. That's kind of the critical part of it. But at the same time, I can't speak for you, Bruce, but as far as my artistic whims, that's where I would like to keep it. I don't really want to do that because that market's being served. And also, if I can flex on our audience a little bit, I think the kind of content we produce, we are the PC gaming of games media, Bruce. I think we appeal to a slightly more sophisticated audience.
Oh, okay. All right. I tend to agree with you a lot. I see a lot of very well thought out comments with nuanced takes that I'm always like, this is very interesting. I like this. Rather than being Starfield is garbage, they tell us why they don't like Starfield, and they have a lot of points about it.
Yeah, which actually kind of drives me to, I think this is unless you had some more points, this is a pretty good concluding point for Starfield. But I wanted to implore you, our sophisticated audience, because like you just said, I've been impressed with people's articulation in the comment section. So why do you love to hate Starfield? Specifically, if you've enjoyed consuming negative content about Starfield, I'd like to know why. And I hope that doesn't come off as judgmental, because I don't know, I spent 2 hours watching Cheaters last night, so I'm not above guilty pleasure media, that's for sure.
No. I mean, like we've time and time again, we say this, that the reason negative content does so well is because everybody wants to watch it. So I'm not telling you that we're not judging you. We're just telling you that that's what it is. Because I'll occasionally see somebody who, gets on top of their soapbox in our comments and it was like, guys, you start producing positive content. And I'm always like, right, but nobody watches it. So we could do it, but eventually we'll go bankrupt. So then we can't make it the stuff anymore. So there's this interesting balance of like, do we want to continue making our show?
Yeah. There's trade-offs that people would like to believe you don't have to make.
Well, and I do want to say this. We've made no trade-offs in the content.
Yeah.
The trade-off is in the title and thumbnail. That's it. That's the only thing that we're doing to try to make sure we get people to watch. Inside of our videos is where we give you all those nuanced takes, and we're telling you, both Lawrence and I really enjoyed Starfield. We think there's a lot of things redeemable about this game. I think it'd be really fun to sit down and play for another 3-4 hours, like whatever. But at the same time, there are also negative aspects to Starfield. So we try to talk about all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And just trying to understand, I suppose. Always wanting to understand. Actually, on that note, I do have one quick theory, Bruce.
Do it. Hit it.
One last possible Starfield theory. I think there's some small feeling of vengefulness behind some of it too. I think people are growing exhausted of big budget games that don't offer artistic satisfaction, because I think people are still expecting some amount of artistic satisfaction out of big budget games.
Okay.
Like, I saw that on Steam a little bit. It's like, we have to rate this game negatively so that Bethesda learns their lesson. So maybe that's part of it, is people like over-consuming negative media to kind of build this growing sense of negativity towards Bethesda to possibly affect some kind of change. I don't know, just a theory. You guys let me know how near the mark that is in the comments, please.
It's a good theory.
Yeah, but speaking of being off the mark, Bruce.
Yeah.
E3's gone forever.
No!
Yeah!
I mean, well, we knew that was happening 5 years ago, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the market forces on top of the event itself, kind of hitting a lot of rocky ground and then doxing hundreds of people. Not cool, ESA. Never really let that one go, because they never really made good on that. Anyway, I was curious if you had any closing thoughts, because when the announcement went out, people were people were very like sentimentally positive.
They were.
I get it from an audience perspective, because from an audience perspective, E3 has always been a parade of delights. But even people in the industry, which I was kind of surprised about, because E3 was a pile of shit, for me at least, to attend and work. But I was curious about you, Bruce, what you felt about the show itself.
Yeah,
from just in general.
No, you're right though. Inside the industry, nobody would ever be like, "Oh, I can't wait for E3." They were always shitting on E3. They were always like, "No, I'm so tired of this. I don't want to be here. There's so many people." Blah blah blah. It was always negative. So it was weird to see a bunch of people in the industry be like, "I'll never forget that one E3 where I stood next to Shigeru Miyamoto." You know, like, what the fuck? I mean, yeah, obviously, as industry insiders, I've been at E3 for 15 years. I want to say I actually loved E3, and I made no bones about it. I loved going to the show. The stuff we had to do around production or whatever would change. So every year there'd be something new that we'd be like, well, okay, well, how do we tackle this?
How far away is our hotel now?
Right. How far away is how small is our booth? How big is our booth? You know, like how many people are actually going to help us with the content? That was always changing. But for me, the show was always fun. I always enjoyed E3. I did enjoy walking around seeing people enjoy video games. I thought that was cool. So that was cool. And I've said this before in other content for Inside Games, but I loved the fact that we got it all in 3 days. I love that. That's never going to happen again. But I love that they would just throw 100 video games at us in 3 days and be like, you know, eat it. And we'd be like, yeah. So I don't know. Those are my closing thoughts on E3. Again, we've talked about this. I want to say fucking at Inside Gaming, when we worked at Rooster Teeth, we talked about how E3 was going away because we saw the big players like Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo making their own press conferences. So we were like, well, writing's on the wall. And, you know, it took a little longer than I guess I would have thought, but the pandemic put the nail in the coffin. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's not necessarily as tragic as it seems. And this is linked back to something that I said earlier. But I think E3 was at its best when the industry itself was also in a particular phase. When the biggest, brightest, and most expensive games were also kind of like creatively aggressive.
Yeah.
Because it was such a new ground, especially in the advent of HD games in the 2000s and 2010s. When a publisher got up and showed you the game that they had poured all their money into for the past 6 years, you had reason to expect that it was going to show you something you'd never seen technically before. You were going to get wowed by some new thing that this game can do. And that also there was going to be some vision of a new world that had a little more spice behind it than a carefully crafted thing that's meant to appeal to as many people as possible. I think you can, like some of the early showings for like Assassin's Creed or Battlefield 3, the showing Levolution, you know, those are huge E3 moments.
Oh, that was Battlefield 4.
Oh, 4, I'm sorry. Yeah. My bad. That was 4. That was sick, though. Oh, man, when the building fell over, holy fuck.
It was sick.
That trailer with the Jeep coming out the elevator.
Amazing.
Man, Battlefield 4 is good. Anyway, the thing is, though, I don't know that that's going to happen anymore. I think when a publisher shows you a big game now, there's no money in trying to make a new feature that's going to wow people in a tech showcase. There's no money in making a brand new IP with a mystical world for people to explore. No one cares about that. They just want reboots and brands they've already heard of. So I think these days, an E3 showcase is going to be cynically underwhelming anyway. If every publisher came together and you saw Ubisoft with their 5th attempt at Skull and Bones to try to figure out just how to tweak the battle pass, like that's where gaming is right now, at least in big budget stuff. The real E3 then would be the middling publishers that have all the cool ideas, but those aren't really mass market. So I think I think everything kind of aligned from the mid 90s to the mid 2010s to make E3 really exciting on a number of levels. And I think a lot of those background reasons are gone now, as opposed to also the show being irrelevant with the internet.
Man, that's such a good point. Gosh, you're totally right about how there were technical advancements every E3, and now we don't almost never get that. Wow.
Yeah, the last time I remember E3 having that flavor was when motion controls were huge, and every year Microsoft would try to convince you the Kinect is good now. There was new tech. It wasn't good, but you would see shit like Milo, you know, the British boy that you could talk to after school every day. Those things don't happen because there's no money in that. So I don't know. No one's going to tune into E3 to see season 4 of Diablo 4, but that's where the money is, and that's where everybody's pouring their development resources.
What a bummer! What a bummer. You're right about the kind of the AA stuff and even single A stuff. To me, my E3 every day is Steam Early Access. Every time I go to Steam Early Access, I'm like, whoa, what the fuck? What is this? And then like, it's some new random video game that I've literally never heard of or seen. And it's like, for an example of like a Vampire Survivors was a great example of that, where I was like, why are people, this is selling so well? Why is this selling so well? And I played it and I was like, holy shit, this game's amazing. And it's $3. You know, like, and it's not like it's not something technically impressive. It's not even a new genre. It's just a really good video game. And that to me is exactly where I have my discovery, where I would have had it once a year at E3. I would have had that like, oh my gosh, Watch Dogs, you can hack every single person on the street. Where now I look through Steam Early Access and I'm like, this is something new that may be something that I now play for months, like Lethal Company. So
yeah, I agree. That's playing Lethal Company has been a delight. But you think about that game in the context of E3, it would be a tiny booth that you just walk right past. You'd be like, oh, another 4-player co-op, well, pass or whatever. Yeah. So, and then the tech that works about that game, the prox chat, it would be really hard to sell how that works in an E3 booth, So we're past this like a glitzy age of game, like past the silver age of Hollywood, maybe. Or no, wait, the epic era when they filmed like Ben-Hur and stuff. We passed that age. Now we're in, gosh, what are we in? We're in like the 50s, where all the big budget movies are just bland rom-coms and like proven formulas that work.
Huh. Wow. You're not wrong. I mean, again, there's going to be some good ones here and there. We'll get those good games. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with enjoying those games either. So if you enjoy the formulaic rom-com, it's okay. Like, enjoy it. But you're not wrong about that.
Yeah, I'm getting a little into my pretense here, but that's my right as an educated gamer. But yeah, it's more me mourning I guess it's one of those things. It's like people can love classic developers like BioWare or whatever, but all the devs are gone and all the context that made those games great isn't there anymore. So it's like when it comes to E3, unfortunately, not only is there no reason for the show to exist, but even if it did, I think the games that get shown there would not be as exciting as they used to be. Yeah,
that's true.
And speaking of venture capital,
it's dead.
Yeah, it's gone. Rest in piss. I mean, I do remember I have some pretty strong memories though, some pretty scary ones. I remember being in the audience when they showed The Last of Us for the first time.
Oh yeah.
And there was a pretty brutal and violent trailer for that, but the audience was loving it. It was like gladiatorial screams when Joel was like braining people with a pipe. And I was like, this is creepy, man. Also, the complete wrong vibe for that game already. And I think maybe I didn't have a big problem with Last of Us Part 1, by the way, but it still was weird to me. I was like, this entire building of people don't get what this game is reacting this way. They just want to murder, which is kind of ironic. And to some degree makes me understand why Last of Us Part 2 was made. Anyway, weird E3 moment, but yeah, one of the first of many times where I was like, oh boy, the audience understanding and artistic intention are starting to split.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of splitting, it's also been a rough year for games in general. And
oh man,
given that you follow business really tightly, Bruce, I know this is not a happy topic, but I was really curious about your take on this. Lots and lots of layoffs. Last headline I saw was like 6,500 total across tons of companies, and that doesn't even include the big tech companies like Microsoft.
Yeah, there's way thousands more across tech companies.
Yeah, and also the merging of tech and gaming in 2023 has been a scary thing, but that's a whole other topic. What do you think about it? So to me, and this is very informal, I was trying to look up job numbers, but all of them require subscriptions to extremely expensive business websites. But there was a gaming boom in 2020. Gaming shot up. A lot of investment money flowed into gaming. Tons of people left development houses to split off and form their own. Like there are a few Blizzard, ex-Blizzard studios out there.
Yeah.
Some ex-DICE studios, like the finals, like Ascendant Studios, I think. Oh no, wait, they made Immortals of Avium.
Oh yeah, well that's another one too.
Yeah,
right.
But they also did layoffs, so it does feel like there was a flood of money, and then now the industry's retracting, and it's sad, but it's also probably still above its 2020 levels.
Oh, it totally is, guaranteed.
So the industry as a whole, even though it would be delightful, I would love for everyone to keep their job forever. It's part of an investment and retraction cycle. You know, it was known that it was coming, and theoretically, the industry and all of its participants are better off because of that investment. I don't know. I wonder what you think. That's a very detached and inhuman take.
No, but it's a good way to think about it in the sense of business, because that's the way businessmen think about it. Because that's totally the way they think. They're like, no, everybody's better off. I don't necessarily personally think that. I don't think Lawrence does either. But that is the way business thinks of it. The way I think of business and gaming is they are literally hand in hand, and they always will be. When it comes to big, giant studios of thousands of people making huge games, they have to think of it as a business. They don't have a choice because they are employing a bunch of people. And when they exploded in the pandemic, I remember thinking, because both Lawrence and I were Twitch streaming, and I think both of our Twitch streams just exploded because people were at home and they were watching Twitch. The first thing I thought of, I was like, this is not going to last forever. That was the very first thing I thought. I was like, this will last maybe a year. I was like, lucky if we get 2 years out of it. And I think we got about 2 years out of it. I was like, so I have to be ready for the fact that my little business is going to retract. And I don't run a multi-billion-dollar business. So I don't necessarily comprehend why you go, we're going to hire 500 people, knowing, because they know they're going to lay off 500 or 1,000 people in 2 or 3 years. People that run those businesses are not stupid. So they're expanding as fast as they can to maybe make as many products as they can. So then to use those products in their market, even later on down the line, long after they've laid off people. So what that requires is for you as a worker to understand business. And that sucks. The reason I know this and understand this better than I think I used to is because this has happened to me so many times. I've been laid off, I think 3 times. Early on in my career, same deal. A television show would hire up and be, and it was funny because they would hire you and go like, oh, we're gonna be making this television show for 10 years. You're good. And I'd be like, I'd be like, really? And they're like, yeah. And then in a year, I'd be laid off. 6 months gone. And so I started learning this. I started learning that once I got a job, I was like, well, I could be gone in a year. I could be gone in, 2 years or whatever. I was lucky if I got 3 or 4. And I also saw a lot of my friends get laid off. So I saw this happen all the time. Sometimes I was part of the layoff. Sometimes I wasn't. I mean, Lawrence and I were at Machinima when they did a bunch of rounds of layoffs. I was at G4 when they did a bunch of rounds of layoffs. I got laid off from G4. It's just happened so much that I'm expecting it. So I hate to tell you, like, if you've been laid off, I want you to go to your next job with that expectation of always having something ready. Just be ready to go somewhere else. Don't think that you're going to have a job for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, because you're not. And that sucks. I wish that there was a better way for those businesses to run, and I'm sure that there is, to be honest with you. But they're not going to make as much money. And the C-suite people are not going to get their bonuses, and the line's not going to go up. So there are a few businesses that I can tell you, not in gaming, but a few businesses I can confidently say, businesses that actually don't run this way. Costco is one of them. Costco is actually a fantastic business. Their financials are always super solid. They pay their employees really well. Most of their employees are very, very, very happy people that are working very hard and getting paid well. But Costco's line only goes up a little bit every year. So that's the catch, is that if you're investing in Costco, your returns are going to be 1% every year or whatever. But gaming doesn't want that. Tech doesn't want that. Tech wants 20, 30, 40% gains. And then the retraction down to 30. I hate it. I really do think that you're just playing with people's lives, and that I think that sucks. So.
Yeah, I agree. I guess I have conflicted feelings about this, and I'm really curious to get your perspective on these. So I feel like I owe where I am now to this cycle.
Ooh.
Maybe that's a bit of a Stockholm Syndrome-y take, but I got my break in games media at Machinima because they had more cash than they knew what to do with. Maybe they would have hired me anyway, but given that the first job they gave to me was to make a newsletter that took like an hour of my time, it did seem like they were just pulling anyone in that they had a remotely good connection with. So I don't think if Machinima hadn't been invested in, I don't think I would have been high on their list, you know?
Yeah.
So that got me in. I actually left because I knew layoffs were coming, and then came back as a contractor later when we started working together. But yeah, got pretty wise to the game quickly. But yeah, in my opinion, they undervalued me pretty hard because I started doing more work for them, and then probably would have been laid off anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I was one of those hires that kind of got brought in under a bulk of money. I think if you run your business well under that model, you identify the overperformers and keep them, and then lay off everyone else.
Right.
So that's one way in which routinely overhiring and laying off can actually get you a better workforce, but it does require looking at people as a resource that you just churn, which is inhumane.
Let me ask you this, Lawrence. When you were laid, because you were laid off, right, from Machinima?
No, I quit.
Oh no, so you quit because you were ahead of it. So that's you had some premonition, which is, by the way, fantastic. But it still sucks, I would imagine. To at least you got to quit on your own terms.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, my terms were I'm leaving, and they were like, okay.
But again, like I said before, Lawrence was looking ahead. Lawrence could see the writing on the wall, and that's one of those things that I know you don't, as an employee, you don't want to think about, but you really do need to think about. And because you don't want to get your life thrown into turmoil at the last second. That's not what you want. Obviously, nobody wants that. So Lawrence looked ahead. So just be aware is all. That's it. I don't know what other advice to give, because that's certainly, unfortunately, that's the way business works right now. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the way it worked in my benefit is it has to be something that you grab. So if you were potentially somebody who got a games industry job in post-COVID and have been laid off, you have a credit on your resume now, and venture capital probably got it there. But you can turn that into more stable employment. So it sucks. Yeah. I don't know. I agree with the outpouring of humanity for people that are laid off, but I maybe this is me getting old and cynical, but I feel like some of these waves are far beyond sentiment on social media. Like, people doing the layoffs don't give two fucks how well articulated an X post is about the layoffs. So
that's true. You're
it's
right.
Unfortunately, yeah, it is a little. I guess what gets me, and this is not the right thing to be confused about, but it's odd to me that people still aren't really talking about games like they're a business. And I guess it's fine to vilify the business parts of it and the business people that make those business decisions. But I don't know. It seems like you're throwing sentiment after something that you're just throwing it after a boogeyman, you know?
You're right. I mean, it is a business, and it is what keeps people employed. So if a game succeeds, then it keeps people employed, usually. So that's kind of like, it's the advice that I would give for any person that works for any company is that they're going to use you, so you should use them.
Yes.
That's always my advice, is know that the company's only going to use you for what they need you for. And you're going to feel used. So what I want you to do with that company is to use them. That's it. Use them for what they're worth. So if to you using a company is getting a raise, get a raise. If to you using a company is to go in and, like, what is it, coffee badge or whatever, then coffee badge.
What's a coffee badge?
It's like basically you just go in and, like, you sit, talk, drink coffee, and sit around and talk, or quiet quitting or whatever. Do that sort of thing. Use the company for what they are for, which is your employment, but do not think of them as something that's going to last forever. And don't think of, even if you have the greatest manager in the world, I promise you, that manager probably has 10 other people above them that are like, you're going to have to lay off 10 people. And your manager is going to be like, well, I'm getting the fuck out of here. Because I was that person. I was the middle management that I was like, I could see what was happening at Rooster Teeth. And I was like, oh, I don't know, guys, I'm not sure. Because I knew. So just be aware, even if you have an amazing manager all the way at the top, people are thinking about how they can cut costs. So don't think of the company as your friend or your family, even if they talk about it like that. Don't do that. Never think about it. Like, you're using them, they're using you. That's the way it works.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Well said, Bruce. It's sad, and you'd like to believe that it's not that way, but mixing emotions and business never ever works out in your favor, because emotions are free and easily manipulated.
That's right.
Speaking of Starfield, of all things. So yeah, it's that's really solid advice. Not that anyone was asking us for advice on the layoffs. It was just an industry trend, and I was really curious what you thought about it. So thanks for sharing your perspective.
Oh, of course.
I guess it's also in context of the bizarre insistence that Jeff recognized layoffs in his gaming awards show. I'm not quite sure what the intention was. What was Jeff supposed to do? Get up and say layoffs are bad and companies shouldn't do them, and then life goes on. Whatever. People want to feel, I guess.
That's what really. Yeah, I guess maybe because they thought, I don't know. People think that the Game Awards is like their emotional catharsis when it's not.
It's the cultural hub of gaming. Yeah,
it's just a show. Yeah, I mean, I don't. Yeah, you're right. I don't know that Jeff ever had that responsibility to be like, guys, no more layoffs, and everyone went, woo!
Yeah, he did it. He did it.
That's never ever going to be it's never going to be the case. So whatever.
Speaking of things we can't change, real quick, we're basically at the end of the podcast here, but I wanted to get some quick look ahead statements because it's almost a new year. Bruce, what do you want to see in 2024 in gaming?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What do I want to see in 2024? I am so bad at these things. People keep asking me like, oh, what are you looking forward to? What's your favorite? Well, like, I was like, oh, am I supposed to say Suicide Squad? I don't know. Like, I truly do not know. I am so bad at looking ahead. I am more of the take it one day at a time type of person. So with that said, I would love to see video games that are not necessarily games as a service as much. And maybe err more on the artistic side versus the business side, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I agree. I would like for those games to get a budget, but I understand the market forces why that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Tragically, like Immortals of Avium came out this year. It was not necessarily artistically profound, but it was unique and new, single player experience. Yeah. Imagine if it was like a COD Battle Wizard game, which is essentially what it was. Anyway, no one cared. So I can't sit here and insist that more people pour money behind projects like that when people don't buy them. So I think realistically, what I want in 2024 is just for Nintendo to release a more powerful Switch.
Oh, that's going to happen.
I think almost guaranteed. Yeah, right? It's got to, right? But that's the one sticking point for me. I basically have I'm not sour about anything these days. I'm eating good. Every genre is represented by talented developers that are trying their heart out. All I'm annoyed about is playing Nintendo games on a fucking calculator from 2015.
You gotta get one in 2024, right? I'm actually really surprised they haven't announced it yet.
Well, they would never kneecap their holiday sales by announcing.
True. You're right. Yeah,
so if it's going to happen next year, and also theoretically they've been stockpiling Switches this whole time, so hopefully they'll go to market with a ton of stock. Hopefully the marketing window will be mercifully brief. I'm expecting about 3 months of announcement to launch would be sick, but
3 months. Oh my gosh, it'd be amazing. Wow, I would love that.
Wasn't that about what the Switch was? I'm pretty sure it was.
Was it from announced to release? Was it really? I actually didn't know that.
I'd have to look it up again, but it was pretty when they showed the trailer of the first trailer for the Switch showing all the aging millennials playing Switch in lots of cool metro places. Right. I think that was pretty close to the launch of the Switch, so we didn't have too long to wait. So yeah, all I want is that's it. I want to stop having to go to weird places on the internet to figure out how to dump games to Yuzu every time Nintendo launches a new game I want to play. It's not that hard. It's not that hard to do, but still.
No, but that's a great goal, Lawrence. I think a lot of people are with you on that one.
Oh gosh, and apart from that, I don't know. It'd be nice if audience sentiment shifted a bit so that we could just talk about good games that are good and sell well. But that's not what people want us for. So we are yet again called on to be brave. And I think we're going to be braver than ever in 2024. I think that's the case.
I think 2024 is going to be a real rough year for video games compared to 2023.
Oh, in terms of launches and stuff?
Yeah, I think we're going to be getting. I think we're not going to be eating good in 2024 compared to 2023. So I think there's going to be a real fall off a cliff moment for a lot of people. Be like, what the fuck? This year sucks. So man, just because 2023 was so great.
That's fine. I got a backlog. That's cool.
Yeah, me too.
Well, to all of you out there, all of our Inside Games viewers and patrons, thank you all very much for watching our content this year. I can't tell you how satisfying it is to make this kind of content with Bruce and to enjoy such a fine audience as yourselves. Sure. We'll be back next year with more Brave gaming content. I don't know. I'm always looking for ways to ramp up things. I might just, I might just ramble on games more. I always get a little conflicted about that, but it's going to be a fun year. And hopefully you'll have plenty of time to crank over that backlog on your holiday break. Bruce,
Absolutely.
what are you playing on? What are you playing these days?
Playing so much Lethal Company. I am actually really looking forward to Suicide Squad, by the way. I think it's going to be a really fun game to stream because there's going to be so many negative people there.
Oh,
so it'll be really fun to be like, is this game actually bad? Because I can tell you that Golem and Kong were actual bad video games. But like with Redfall or whatever, I was like, this game's like right down the middle. It's not very good, but it's also not terrible. And everyone's like, this is the worst game in the world. So I love those conversations of like, guys, I'm playing it. I played it for 5 hours. It's not that bad. It was the same with Avatar. Everyone's like, Avatar's stupid. And I was like, no, dude, this game kind of rules. I don't know. So I'm looking forward to that sort of stuff in 2024.
Cool. Yeah. More audience disassociation. It's the best.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Man, I want to play Dragon's Dogma 2. Right now,
me too. Yeah.
Right now I just got into Chained Echoes in a big way, which is a really it's like a huge throwback PS1 style RPG. So that's my cozy gaming at the moment. Hopefully you're cozying up with the game this holiday, and we'll see you all in 2024.
That's right.